Welcome to another episode of Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I'm your host, Megan, and my amazing co-host is...
Hey, I'm Amanda.
Hello there.
Hi.
Together, we are your source for messy, imperfect homeschool advice and community. Good advice that's based on so many years of experience homeschooling and in various aspects of the education world between the two of us, but not the shove the mess out of the way, set up a ring light, and tell people on the interwebs that we are perfect 24 hours a day kind of advice.
Yeah, we don't do that here. In my case, primarily because I record in our second bathroom and there wouldn't be enough room to even shove stuff out of the way. You just get the corner where the mops used to hang, but they don't anymore. Just the things for the mops. Anyway, if there's a mess, you're going to see it, or at least hear about it. If we are on the struggle bus, we'll tell you. If we have a win, we're going to share that too. So basically, you can count on us for just a balanced glimpse into what homeschooling looks like for the vast majority of homeschoolers out there. The last thing that we want is for someone to listen to this podcast and walk away feeling like they just can't measure up to our fake social media personas. I love the social media personalities out there that are keeping it real. Jen Hamilton, anyone? Right? And that is definitely what we're going for over here. I barely have the energy to live the life that I've got. I sure as hell don't have the energy to create some fake ass life for you to envy, okay?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I mean, it's like that old saying too, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah.
So they're not living that way, but it's hard to remind yourself of that when you're being bombarded with it 24 hours a day. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Very true.
All right. So beyond realness and messes, what can you expect here with us? Well, first of all, inclusion. We are two moms. That's how the cards were dealt, right? That's how the dice were rolled. I don't know. We are definitely unfiltered, hence the name and the explicit rating, depending on where you're listening. But you don't have to be a mom to hang here. However you identify to the world, we adore you and we're happy you're here and welcome.
I always find it a little weird when we get Facebook about how having moms in our title is exclusionary. It always makes me wonder if Stark Raving Dad ever gets that, where people are like, well, I'm not a dad, so clearly you aren't welcoming to me. Or is it one of those things where like the patriarchy is still freaking winning? Because it's that thing, like we all know that anyone can walk into Five Guys and eat. But if something even hints at like moms, it's considered, oh, it's not for anyone who identifies as anything except moms. Like, I don't know. I don't know if that, well, yeah, I'm not going to go off on patriarchy this early in the show. We'll never get back to the actual show. So yeah, anyway, at the end of the day, we want our community members to be their authentic selves. Know that you are valued in this space, however you come in here, no matter how you identify or describe yourself or your family, you are welcome. The other thing that you can expect here is secular and progressive values. So what do we mean by that? Well, we are truly sick and tired of ICE. And I mean full stop by that, but especially the whole just shooting people thing. We are here for the fact that Pride Month is followed by Disability Pride Month, which happens to be July of every year. If you don't already know that, definitely worth learning about. Go do a quick search. We absolutely believe in public education supported by our tax dollars. Even as homeschoolers, everyone should be able to get a quality education. And we do actually believe in, things like international law and the International Criminal Court, even if the United States State Department doesn't and is going to show them that we're sovereign.
Okay, I can't. This past week, I was talking to my mom. I said, I really feel like it's snowballing, which we were told ahead of the midterms that was the game plan. That's the strategy. But this past week felt intense. So yeah. So if you are also feeling this kind of indescribable mix of outrage and heartbreak for the families that are impacted by these horrendous and fully preventable tragedies, and you're disgusted by the constant corruption and honestly just the ridiculousness of this entire current administration, you have likely found your people. And if you're new to the homeschooling world, we'll just go ahead and tell you that you should hit follow right now, because finding this in the homeschool world is a little bit like finding a needle in a haystack. If you show up to your first homeschool meetup and start talking about abortion rights and trans rights and the earth being millions of years old, you're likely to get voted off the island so fast your head's going to spin. So we are
Yeah.
unique.
Yeah, no kidding. You're like, oh, I went to the Pride Parade. Did you? They'd be like, covering their kids' ears and walking away. Like,
Yeah.
come this way,
Pride is a
little pony.
sin. That's my favorite. That's
Yeah.
my favorite one. I'm like, okay. And then they're out there on 4th of July with their Lee Greenwood, and I'm proud to be an American. I'm like, I thought pride was a sin.
Oh, yeah. But that's okay, because we are building our own communities. We know, statistically speaking, that the secular and liberal or progressive segments of the homeschool community are growing much more rapidly than the young earth, dinosaurs and Jesus were friends crowd. So your people are out there, but they're probably a lot less organized and therefore not as easy to find as the OG homeschool crowd. And look, all of those secular, inclusive, progressive homeschoolers are thinking, man, I wish there was a secular co-op around here, or like just a park play date even. But they're also simultaneously waiting for someone else to start it or build it, because like you and us, they are like super busy. I'm like, oh, I don't have the bandwidth for that. So when you're ready to put out the bat signal and find your local homeschoolers, come join us on Patreon. We have actually an ebook available over there for download right now. This is July of 2026. Who knows how long it'll actually be there, but it is there for people. And it's designed specifically to walk you step by step for finding your local like-minded homeschoolers. And it's everything from like, I just want to create like a super easy pick up and go group of like-minded people to like, I want to scale this bad boy to a massive co-op. It's literally step by step for any level, with language and legal things you should think about and all of it.
True story. All right. So, topic for the day. We're going to be talking about how to escape the confines of a resource, any resource, and branch out from it to go deeper. We spend a lot of time hanging out with and talking to homeschool parents and caregivers, and this tends to be something that isn't terribly intuitive for new homeschoolers, which we totally get. It makes sense. It can be overwhelming to start when you're new homeschooling, and then you find a program or a unit study or a book, and it kind of gives you this really clean, straight path to follow. And that feels really safe and secure. And who doesn't love feeling safe and secure? So it makes sense.
And I mean, not only safe and secure, but it takes less spoons for sure.
Yeah.
As a person with chronic illness, I find it so much easier to open a curriculum and go. And honestly, there are some days I don't even have the energy for that. So before we say anything else, we want to assure you that you are welcome to continue using curriculum and pacing guides and truly whatever else works for you, as long as you need and or want to use that thing. Okay. That said, we also hear quite often from homeschool parents, especially newbies, but anyone who's like ready for a transition or a little bit of a change, or they've switched curriculum and the new one isn't quite as fun or exciting. They say that kids feel like school isn't super fun, or they'd like to make learning more hands-on. But the endless ways to do that can feel so overwhelming that the grown up in that situation just doesn't even know where to start. Like, how am I going to bring that into this new thing? Or how are we going to change or tweak? So today we're going to actually walk through some real examples of ways to be more hands-on and just have more fun with your learning at home. And we're hoping by using just a regular resource that you could pick up from the library or whatever store you like going to, whatever online resource you prefer, and showing you how to use that and branch out and do all kinds of interesting things with it will hopefully help with the overwhelm and give you some baby steps towards maybe trying something new.
Yeah, exactly. Because the reality is, oftentimes, these amazing core memory implanting learning experiences are off the prescribed path, in the weeds and on the gravel path that it looks sketchy off onto the side of the road. So we'll be exploring. But first, we start all of our episodes with a weekly recap. It's part of our keeping it real vibe around here. So how's your week been, Amanda?
I'm going to say, thankfully, things seem to have finally settled down into a better rhythm for us, at least as far as school stuff and summer in general goes. I finally managed to check off some pretty big to-do list things. So that feels good, right? Like I've had the
Mhm.
same to-do list for like 2 months. So the fact that I got some of those important things off of my list feels good. The kiddo is really enjoying the new math curriculum that I talked about, how we were going to try it out this summer, but we were having a hard time getting going on it and using it consistently. So he's enjoying that. He's been doing it. And that's really good data as we start trying to really nail down our plan for the 2026-27 school year. I will say perimenopause is absolutely kicking my ass right now. I am so over irregular cycles. Like, I don't know who thought that that was a sufficient enough term for what you deal with in perimenopause, but it's the understatement of the century, right? This every 16 days for months and then suddenly 51 days. And then there's a 26-day cycle and then stupid loop cycles. And I'm not here for it. I mean, obviously I'm here, I'm stuck in this hell, but I am definitely not happy about being stuck here. I will say you don't need to flood our social medias with supplements and suggestions. I am scheduled to see a specialist who can work with my team of other specialists. But like all specialist appointments, the first available appointment was like 8 months out. So ask me how it went in late October. So yeah, fun
If you're not
times.
hooked up for like an iron transfusion by then or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Or, I need bail money because I just really lost it. That's, that happens. So
I'm going to
anyway,
guess the person who came up with irregular periods also came up with morning sickness because
yeah,
from
right.
somebody who threw up round the clock. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Morning was unpleasant, but it wasn't nearly as bad as the whole fucking rest of the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that. So anyway, what's up in your world, Megan?
Oh, goodness. Well, by the time you're listening to this, my baby, who's way bigger than me at this point, but he'll still be my baby forever, will be off at summer camp for 2 weeks. And, typically I'm very free range in parenting and I'm very much like throw caution to the wind, try it. It'll be great. Like, even if you're nervous about it, once you get there and you make a few friends, it'll be great and give it a
Mhm.
whirl. And what's the worst that could happen? I'm very much like, go try this thing, kind of giving them a little push if I feel like it's something that's doable for them. And this I know, of course, is. But this is also my kiddo who has the highest support needs of my kids. And so there are just general concerns whenever he's away from home about just kind of the general building blocks of health and wellness, things like eating and sleeping, which are really important things. You know, like if those
Nah.
two things are out of whack, everything else goes downhill real fast. I mean, think about yourself, right? If you're tired and hungry, it's like I can turn into a bitch really, really fast. So yeah. So, hopefully those things work out. I mean, we've got things in place. I ordered a fan that's just like the fan that's in his room at home, and I had it sent to the head office for camp, and they're going to make sure that it's in his room. And so we're working on things and have some plans in place. And the camp has been really, really good about all of his accommodations that he needs and everything. So hopefully things are going amazing by the time you listen to this, we shall see. And then I felt a little bit better because there's a homeschool mom that I quote unquote know who I've never met in person. It's one of those things where you talk to somebody all the time online, and we both homeschooled in North Carolina, but in different parts of the state. And we just kind of kept bumping into each other in various groups and stuff. And they're now living in England. And I messaged her and was like, how far are you from where Liam's going to camp. She goes, I'm 10 minutes away. And she's going to the US to visit some family, but coming back the night before he gets there. So it was just meant to be. And I said, can you agree to be his emergency mom if something happens? I mean, I will get on the first plane if I need to, but until I get there. And she was like, absolutely, 24 hours a day, whatever you need. And so that's one of my favorite things about the homeschool community. But I think just in general, too, you hear so many things about female friend groups being nasty. And I think if you surround yourself with the good, like, she's like, yeah, I got you. No problem. We've never met. And I'm like, I would get on a plane for her if I needed to in a heartbeat. She has a kiddo who's a medically complex kiddo, and she's living in England without family. I'm like, you need something? I can be there in 2.5 hours. I can be there so much faster than your family. If you find the right people, it's not a problem. So yeah, but if we're talking messy and imperfect, I have shown up today to podcast in my house dress. I had plans of putting real clothes on, and today was so complicated that last night I literally sent a schedule to the group text with the kids of, okay, I'm going to the gym with one kid at 12:30, and then I'm having lunch with this kid at this time, and then this needs to happen, and you need to go here and pick this thing up, and you have tutoring at this time, and you have chess club at this time, and all of that because it's my oldest son's half birthday, and we were just trying to find a time when all four of us were going to be in the apartment at the same time to sing happy half birthday and cut a sliced cake. So we started podcasting a half an hour later than we typically do on our schedule, so that I could squeeze that half an hour in to make that happen. And I came rushing in and I was like, oh, I'll change my clothes. And that didn't happen. So house dress it is. And also, if we're talking messy, I ordered a 4-pack of toilet paper from Uber Eats at 12:30 in the morning last night. Right? Because
One of those days.
Right? Yeah. I literally, thankfully it was me who went to pee, pulled like not quite enough toilet paper, but enough to get by. And I went to go grab another one to supplement. I was like, oh no, it was 12:30. I'm like, well, so Uber Eats to the rescue.
Morning's going to be bad without a solution right now.
Yeah, that's it. So I ordered from a gas station that was open 24 hours a day, and they brought it. And I was like, thank you, thank you. So yeah, so just busy, just lots going on, but fine, A-okay, it all works. So it's good. All right. Phew. So let's talk today about getting off the paved road and onto the gravel, one-lane, narrow pathways that oftentimes lead to some really awesome places. Now, please don't mistake us when we say, especially coming from me, quote unquote, getting off the paved road as code for you have to get rid of all of your curriculum. It's completely worthless and you're doing something wrong. That's definitely not the message here. That is so not what's happening. Can you homeschool without curriculum? Absolutely, you can. I can count on one hand the amount of formal, traditional school type books that I've bought in my decade plus, I'm over, but of homeschooling.
I'm going to have to guess you're getting closer to 2 hands with the kiddo you've got right now. Yeah.
I'll get there. Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure. His high school season, because he likes that style. Now, the funny thing was I did do like a check-in with him and I go, how's it working? Are you using the textbook? He goes, haven't touched it. She turns them all into slides. And I was like, okay, I paid €42 to ship that to Europe for you. But okay, I kept that thought as an inside thought, but I was like, great. So he hasn't touched it, but I already have the pre-calculus book for the fall and the physics book. So if they're there if he needs them.
That is it. That's so hard. We use the same curriculum that you're talking about. And the same thing, we have the textbook. I think in theory, it could be great and really useful, but getting the kid to actually open it, almost impossible. Because he's like, it's all done. Like, I don't need it. The online lecture is enough. I'm like, okay,
Great.
that's great. We got the textbook. We got the parent version. We got the answer key. Because I like printed. Printed works better for me, but
Yep. Well, hopefully you can sell them used one day. They'll be like,
that's it.
When you list them, you can go like new, right?
Yep.
Great condition.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I do not buy much at all in the way of traditional school type books, but it is 100% possible to use whatever you're currently using. You don't have to change anything if it's working for you, and have that be your straight and narrow path, your clean paved road, and then just take detours here and there. And then eventually return back to your paved road. So we're not telling you have to blow up everything and rebuild your entire homeschool life to do this process.
This is absolutely true. We, Amanda, we are a curriculum household. But one of the best parts of homeschooling is that you can cover all their traditional academic stuff in a fraction of the time kids would if they were back in brick and mortar school. And that means you've got loads of time to let the learning and exploration take you wherever it takes you. Sometimes that's going to be deeper on something that we planned, sometimes. And sometimes that's related to the part-time world schooling stuff that we do. Sometimes it's just because we needed a break or heard about some fun opportunity locally. And we're like, hey, let's go check that out. We have time to do that. But we can embrace all of those things while also zooming along in our curriculum. For us in our house, it just makes a super well-rounded education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whereas in our household, we hang out on the gravel pathways more often than not. And then every once in a while, we dabble in the curriculum world from time to time and at a kiddo's request for something specific. So sometimes more, sometimes less. It just kind of depends on the kid. As we were kind of insinuating before, I do have one kid who kind of likes the paved road. He's happy on the gravel, but he also likes the paved road. He bounces back and forth. But for his core subjects, he likes his paved road. And that's fine. So it's funny because I actually have a super specific memory in mind when I think of the gravel off the beaten path analogy that so perfectly describes how we live and learn. So this is going way back. This was in the summer of 2018. We were on one of our, what we would call our epic summer road trips. And we visited so many national parks and we were just unplugged and loving life. We were camping. We were showering at truck stops and in really sketchy bathrooms. We were eating so many grilled cheese sandwiches because there's only so much you can cook when you're camping. And it was probably the greatest summer I've ever had with my kids. So it was awesome. But we were at Yellowstone National Park and my oldest kiddo had been chatting with somebody in the campground or whatever who had mentioned that they had come into Yellowstone from the opposite direction than us. And they had gone to Dinosaur National Monument on their way in. Wasn't even on our itinerary at all. But this person was raving about it and my kiddo made a case to go, and I need very little convincing to shift course for a fun adventure. So when we pulled out of Yellowstone, I plugged Dinosaur National Monument into Google Maps and off we went. But the roads we took there, oh my God. Every time GPS told me to turn, the road was narrower, bumpier, and more deserted than the last one. And finally, that little GPS robotic lady was like, hang a right. And we were on this 1-lane gravel road in the middle of this deserted area. And this was before we had the camper van. So I was driving my quote unquote little Volvo SUV, like for towing. It's not that big, but it was the biggest SUV Volvo makes, and our little tiny travel trailer behind us. And like, here's the deal. I have a lot of skills in life, but backing up the trailer in a straight line is not one of them. I mean, I tried. My husband was like, you have to turn it right to go left or whatever. I was like, that makes no sense, right? It's never gone well. So I stopped and I was like, if I keep going and this turns out to be a big mistake and I'm way down there, like, how am I going to turn around? This is not going to work. So long story long, we finally get to Dinosaur National Monument. It was totally epic. It was totally worth the diversion. We have a tradition where when we get to a national park, we all hop out and we take a picture at the park entrance sign and the photo at Dinosaur National Monument, I am literally kissing the ground because the drive there was so stressful. And I was just so happy that we made it there in one piece and we were dangling off the edge of a cliff. So that's a bit of an extreme example, even for us, but we really do love to get off the beaten path. And then quite possibly the funniest part of that whole story, though, is that when we left, I plug in our next stop. We were going to continue going south into the GPS and she routes me to wherever. And there was a fucking highway like right there. And I was like, why did you bring me on this convoluted way in? Because clearly that highway doesn't end at Dinosaur National Monument. It keeps going past it. So it was on the other side also. That was an option. What the hell? So I think she has like a masochistic side to her or something. And I was like, okay, but we had a great day.
I love that. That was an option as well. Okay, so today we are going to take a couple of super basic and probably specifically one for time reasons, but entry-level books that would be your more traditional resource. It's a decent novel and show you some very specific, easy to replicate ways that you can do more, have more fun, add in some hands on stuff, or just go deeper, follow those random little trails that you're like, maybe that's an interesting thing to look at. Whatever lights your kiddo up and makes learning something that they want more of. So, the idea for this episode actually came to us while we were working on our July unit study. It's part of our whole American history series we've been creating, and this specific one focuses on US presidents. In the unit study, we included links to some of the Who Was books. And generally speaking, these are books that we have both used with our kiddos when they were younger, and we generally liked them. Now, look, we have seen some people who really don't like Who Was books, oftentimes because they feel like they oversimplify complicated or complex issues, which is true, and they aren't decolonized enough. And I mean, again, yes, we can see that in some cases, but first, we're going to show you how to go deeper today. So that solves that problem of oversimplifying things and also being decolonized.
Mhm.
And second, they're really intended for young kids. We're talking 7 to 10, maybe up to a 12-year-old, but the Lexile levels are often in the 600 to 700 range, which is considered proficient reading for a third or fourth grader. Now, look, that said, if you've got an older kiddo who just isn't interested in reading and these catch their attention, that is totally fine. My niece was
Mhm.
not a reader. She loved these books in middle school. Were they below her Lexile level? Sure, of course. But she was reading, and that's a good thing. Full stop. These books, like most resources, introduce topics in an age and developmentally appropriate way for young kiddos, with the belief that you're going to circle back to those topics as they age and mature, and they're ready for you to layer on deeper concepts and think more critically and really dig in.
Mhm. Yeah, so true. They're definitely not limited to young kids. No book is. I mean, if you want to sit and read The Velveteen Rabbit as an adult, go ahead, have the best time ever. Grab some tissues. But yeah, I built multiple really strong middle school courses off Who Was books and could very easily build a high school elective off a Who Was book as well. And if you're listening and thinking, I've seen those books and there's absolutely no way this lady is about to propose some weak ass content that will in no way, shape, or form prepare my kid for life, the real world, whatever comes next, etc. Stick around. I promise you I can do it. A fun challenge for me.
And if I didn't know you and your love for building out themed units, I would absolutely be skeptical too. But I have worked on far too many projects with you at this point where you take a simple project or a project that we have already outlined together and the scope is clearly defined. And then the next thing I know, you come back with a 75-page document or a trilogy where each section looks kind of like one of those crazy complicated diagrams on the wall with the pictures and the note cards and the pins and the string. So yeah, I have no doubt we are going to end up in some very interesting places today. But I do think this will be good because a few weeks back in our play-based early childhood education episode, we talked about building out themes. And then in our fairly recent interest-led learning episode, we again talked about building out themes. So this will give people who are like, okay, I'm picking up what you're putting down, but like, how? How do I actually do this thing? Like, this is going to give some just practical, like step-by-step directions on how to do the thing.
Yeah, and this doesn't just apply to Who Was books. This is a transferable skill because you can take this concept and this spider web style of thinking where you kind of branch out in different directions and apply it to a documentary, a family vacation, etc. So the plan for today is we're going to take one Who Was book and see how to expand it into a big learning adventure. And then later in the episode, we'll explore how to do something similar for older learners.
All right, I'm here. I'm along for the ride. Let's see where you take us. We're going to stick with this whole car road metaphor thing you're trying to make work.
Buckle up. Ha! Okay. Yeah. Okay, so the single topic book I chose for this example is What Was the Great Depression?
That is not a who was book. That is a what was book.
I mean, we're using transferable skills already. Look at us. It's so different. So wildly different.
Yeah.
Okay. The book starts off with a few introductory pages giving readers an overview of the Great Depression before jumping into chapter 1. Chapter 1 kicks off with the Roaring Twenties, life after World War I, and the booming stock market. Now, if you're not familiar with these books, they have these little call out boxes is how I refer to them. I don't think that's a proper name. They're these little asides that introduce related topics to whatever's in that section. And basically that's what we're talking about doing today. But we are just going to go a lot further than the call out boxes in the Who Was books are going to go. So there's a call out box in chapter 1 about prohibition, and then there's another one about Wall Street and the New York Stock Exchange. And if you're feeling unsteady or you're barely hanging on when it comes to time and spoons, these are a great place to start. Maybe just go deeper into those two things, into those two call out boxes. You don't have to go beyond that at this point. That's kind of a baby step entry point into a mildly gravelly road off to the side, right? Like just a little bit. So I'll tackle the prohibition box for an example. The first part of the first sentence says, in 1920, the U.S. government made it illegal to sell alcoholic drinks. There's nothing in there about the temperance movement, which, as someone who's sick of seeing women erased from history, I'm like, hello? This wasn't just a brilliant idea that the government had. The temperance movement had been campaigning for this for years. So that would be where I would start. Now, did prohibition fail in so many ways? Absolutely. Do I think the government should ban alcohol? No. And I don't even drink. But did these women who campaigned for years and years, who were really tired of having their husbands piss away their entire paycheck in a bar and then come home drunk and beat the shit out of them or sexually assault them, have a really valid reason for wanting to outlaw alcohol? Yeah. Because at the time, they had no recourse for any of those things. No one was going to help you if your husband was doing this. So depending on the age and maturity of your kiddo, you can explore that. Now, if you're loving rabbit hole exploration and you want to branch out beyond the prepared call out boxes that are in the book, I would go to the Roaring Twenties because that was in there. Amanda brought up that sometimes these books are not as decolonized as we would like. I'd be going to the Harlem Renaissance first and foremost. It's a great way to take a book that is super surface level and make it much more diverse. That would lead me to listening to jazz musicians who were all the rage at that time. I mean, heck, I have a kid who's into fashion and sewing. There's probably no way she'd be coming out of this experience without making herself a flapper dress and something that she's sewn using Depression era flour sack patterns. So
Oh, yeah. I think for us, I would also use this opportunity to make it more real for my kiddo or your kiddo if you're doing it. Do you have any family members that shared stories from that time? Because for me, my grandma, when she was still with us, used to talk about the flour sack and potato sack clothing, and she carried that with her into adulthood. So my mom has plenty of stories of potato sack clothing that she herself wore when times were tough. I would absolutely share those stories so it's less like a long, long time ago and more like this happened when my grandma was your age, or your grandma's mom was really great at that stuff. And that if you're fortunate enough to have family photo albums, you can absolutely spend an afternoon looking through them and making connections and talking about the things you see in the pictures and how it's different than what a picture would look like today and why you don't have as many pictures. There's so many things that you can just talk about through photos.
mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And potato sack, no thank you. At least the flour sack had a little bit of drape to it, a little
Yeah.
bit, but yeah.
Yeah, no, potato sack clothing, not fun. That's the stories. Those are all the stories about how awful potato sack clothing is. But back then, you had
What there
that.
was.
That's,
Mhm.
yeah, exactly. If that's what you could afford, you already had the material. I'm not sure I would call it fabric, but you already had the material. So, you used what you could.
Yeah. And wasted nothing. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Another thing the book references in this area is the U.S. coming out of World War I during this period. There's a mention in the book about cars and electricity spreading during this post-war boom. Now, historically speaking, war, as awful as it is, has been a tremendous catalyst for innovation. This is cyclical through most wars. And then after the war, the new technology that was created for the purposes of winning this conflict spill over into civilian life and into society. And that's what they're describing here. So perhaps look at that trend with other wars as well, or specifically look at what technology evolved as a result of World War I and how it impacted everyday life after the war. Continuous track tires, like the kind on a bulldozer, the long, lanky ones, they existed before World War I, but not a ton. They weren't super common. But then during the war, all this time and money and research and development went into improving them because they needed tanks that could go through muddy fields and snowy areas and things like that. So after the war, the use of those boomed and completely changed family farms all over the United States. So that's a topic to explore. Okay, now you're getting the idea. If we're not going to be here all day, we're going to pick up a little bit of speed, slow your player down if it's too fast. Okay. Chapter 2, there's talk about the gap between unskilled workers and farmers and the wealthy class. Look at those trends from that time and then through to today. Identify patterns. See if you can figure out what was going on in each period to cause the gap to expand or shrink. Look at other things that are going on in society at that time. There's a call out box on Morse code. You bet your butt we'd be sitting there tapping out messages in my house and trying to figure out what the other person is saying. That would be so much fun.
Well, and you definitely know that my kiddo went through his Morse code phase. There's no way he didn't. But then he's also got a vintage typewriter from the 1930s. So that's no surprise to anyone who follows the podcast. I do know that our local science museum actually has an original Morse code machine. So you might look and see if you can find one around you and make a field trip of checking it out. Anytime you can find something like that where it's like, let's leave the house and go look at this thing, that counts as school. If you were in a brick and mortar school, kids would do field trips. We have a school here in town that is a public school, and its whole thing, it's a charter, kind of like a magnet, depending on where you live, but it's still considered a public school. And its whole thing is they do weekly field trips. They find a reason to take the kids out into the community and see things in person, in real life, all of the time. And if they can get federal funding to keep their school open and to do it that way, you can too. You can count that as school.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. The next chapter, we get into the bank failure. Okay. 100% we'd be watching It's a Wonderful Life. The bank run in It's a Wonderful Life, the whole thing. Doesn't even matter if it's not Christmas time. Go watch It's a Wonderful Life. It's also one of those cultural things that people reference all the time about every time a bell rings, an angel gets its way. Okay, fine. These are just things that this is how kids get to know those cultural references, is through these expansive learning experiences. But then beyond that, we'd also be looking at what policies and measures have been put into place to prevent this from happening again. Okay. The next chapter talks about Hoovervilles, which are the shanty towns that were set up all over the country when people were without housing, and they would build domiciles for themselves, shelters for themselves out of whatever they could find. Bread lines and soup kitchens are in there. There are pictures galore of all of these things. You could look at pictures of New York City Central Park today on Google Earth, Google Images, and then look at it during this time frame. Central Park was filled with Hooverville shanty huts. Rabbits and armadillos were often referred to as Hoover hogs. Of course, Hoover being the president, and that's where this link comes from. Kids should understand that. People ate whatever they could catch and kill. They were starving. So this would also have me scurrying to find Depression-era recipes that we could actually make and try. It would not be an armadillo, but there's plenty of other ones that are out there. Right? There's a YouTube channel called Cooking with Clara. She has sadly passed away, but her grandson recorded a cooking show with her in her little old kitchen with her not fancy stove. It's the cutest thing ever. She has millions of followers on YouTube, millions. And she recorded her Depression cooking recipes where she's cutting up hot dogs and trying to make things last and using Spam and all this stuff. It's amazing. It's so fantastic. They talk about hobos, which is how the book refers to them because that was the term that was used at the time. These are people that were traveling the country looking for work. It mentions that many of them were picking crops and moving with the crops seasonally. They, however, completely gloss over how incredibly difficult this type of work is and how horrifically small the pay was, how terrible the working conditions were. That's not covered in this book. Again, you gauge with the age of your learner and all that good kind of stuff. For us, I've never been one to shelter or shy away from tough topics. I'm kind of a here's the full story kind of parent. So this for us would lead us to a conversation of then versus now sort of situation, exploring the lives of migrant farm workers. We'd also be looking at people like Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta and the work that they did for farm workers, which is not the same time frame. It's later, but it all applies.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. Well, and going back to what we said earlier about these being introductory level books for young kids, you do need to gauge how deep to go. But if you're going to talk about the National Farm Workers Association, you can decide if you want to go into the fact that we now know Chavez was a sexual predator. That is part of current events. And you can decide how you're going to connect that. And your kid might decide for you how you're going to connect that. You need to be open to having those conversations. But through all of this, you can kind of see which aspects of these tangents excite or intrigue your kids. There will be things where they explore it, they get it, they're content to move on. And then there will be things that you think they're going to absolutely love, and they're like, wah, 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 and you sound like the Charlie Brown teacher. And then there are going to be aspects where you dig in and they just have question after question after question. And then this might be a good thing to spend more time on these areas and to go a bit deeper. And let's look at what other things we can find or what other connections we can make.
Yeah. Okay. Next chapter talks about the plight of farmers at the time. Here's where World War I and capitalism both come into play big time. There were slogans, propaganda slogans during World War I saying, "Wheat will win the war." Farmers were encouraged to grow as much wheat as possible. They were given really favorable loan terms to buy more land on credit in order to be able to do that. And the government is telling them that this is their patriotic duty. And so you have people who do feel a strong sense of connection to the country and winning this war and fighting evil. And then on top of it, these people are human, and capitalist greed became a thing where it was like, oh, we're making a fortune on wheat. This is amazing. I would like even more land and even more land. And so they went hog wild, stripping this entire region of the country in Oklahoma and in Texas, up in the Panhandle, of all the natural grasses that were there so that they could plant more wheat to, number one, make oodles of money, and number two, do their patriotic duty, which creates the Dust Bowl. Okay, so we can branch out and explore other ways that humans disturb natural ecosystems, both today and throughout history. And the results can range from, oh, that's not so good, that's going to have some long-term effects, to absolutely catastrophic, like the Dust Bowl. I mean, people were dying from dust pneumonia, and it was just absolutely, absolutely terrible. So then you've got Hoover at the beginning of the Great Depression and as the president, and then we go to Roosevelt after the election. I would deep dive on both of them. Who are these men? What were their backgrounds? What sorts of platforms did they run on? What sorts of policies did they implement? Roosevelt kicks off the New Deal, and people always talk about the New Deal like it's this one thing. The New Deal was this massive umbrella program. I mean, massive. You had everything from the Blue Ridge Parkway, which people in North Carolina and Virginia love to look at foliage on in the fall, to Social Security is in this program. Everything is there. There were about 60 major programs and reforms there that were carried out. And there were 69 government agencies, federal agencies, between 1933 and the late 1930s that were implementing these things. They created thousands of schools, courthouses, post offices, libraries, parks, sidewalks, bridges. I mean, you name it, it fell under the New Deal, basically. And one of the offices that was under there was the WPA, the Works Progress Administration. And those workers improved over 650,000 miles of roadways during this time frame. The Civilian Conservation Corps planted more than 3 billion trees, billion with a B, bananas. The amount of math and graphing that you could do all around the New Deal, I mean, it's endless. It's absolutely endless. The Hoover Dam wasn't started under Roosevelt. It was started under Hoover, but then it became absorbed into the New Deal when Roosevelt becomes president and initiates the New Deal. So we'd totally be taking a virtual tour of the Hoover Dam and looking at the surrounding geography and trying to figure out why they put it there and how does this thing work and what impact does it have? What benefits does it have? We'd be gaining an understanding of how much water is going through there. And then because we're total nerds, we'd probably be like, well, how does this differ from other dams? And so we'd start looking at those and comparing size and scale and function and all that kind of stuff too. There's absolutely no way that you can study this period without diving into the fact that FDR had polio as a child and was a wheelchair user, and his campaign for the March of Dimes. His disability was hidden from most people in the United States because there wasn't a television in every home when he was elected and there weren't cameras like there are today. So that was a huge piece of FDR's life and his story and some of the initiatives that he started, and oftentimes they're not discussed or covered. There's a small call out box in the book about Eleanor Roosevelt, FDR's wife. She was quite the badass. And I'd be spending as much time deep diving on her as I am with the presidents. She did a press event at one point where she flew in a plane with a Tuskegee Airman and made sure that there were photos and they were splashed all over the place. And she was using her position to make a statement because a lot of people in society didn't have faith in the Tuskegee Airmen or see the value that they brought, obviously, because of the time that it was and how racist people were. I say were like it's a past tense thing, right? Like, yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not, but it was at that time towards the Tuskegee Airmen in that sense. And so she was like, no, I'm going to make a statement very clear that I am going to trust this person with my life, that this person is a capable pilot. So amazing. The book has a little blurb about FDR's fireside chats. These are national addresses that he did on the radio at the time. You can listen to them online. There are whole playlists on YouTube of his fireside chats where he would comfort the nation during these difficult times. He would talk about what he was doing to try to make improvements. This begs exploration of politicians as orators and their ability to comfort a nation in difficult times. Which leaders have excelled at this? Which have struggled? Talk about a great rabbit hole. Okay. Then there's a call out box on the labor movement, which is always worth exploring. Vox has a great video about labor movements and unions, specifically in the United States versus other countries, and exploring why the industries in the United States are all born without a union. And people who don't have as much power as the industry leaders and captains have to then fight to unionize them. And it isn't like that in all other countries. We just kind of take that as it is what it is in the United States in so many ways. And so, yeah, take some time to look at the US history with labor unions and favoring big business over workers' rights. Examine large demonstrations throughout history that moved the needle, things like the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, fire. Then the book ends with what ironically brings us out of the Great Depression, World War II. So it goes into the bombing of Pearl Harbor and then the fact that the war machine kicks off after that, turns the economy around. To put it very, very simply for time, because again, we'll be here all day. And the book also puts it quite simply because of the intended audience of the book, but you could certainly go into that deeper. There's a whole host of Who Was books that I would line up directly after this one. We can talk about that another time. Okay. So you could easily, from my perspective, you could so easily spend 2 months on this book if you're interspersing it with your other curriculum. And of course, you could be reading other books in the meantime. This could just be the thing that you choose to deep dive if it's a topic that you're looking to cover. If you're loving project-based learning, you could just deep dive on this for a month or more. You don't have to have a curriculum that this pairs with. This can be your curriculum because you can balance it in a way where kids are doing math and they're writing and they're doing science and they're doing this and they're doing that. You can 100% do that. Okay. Go find movies like Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken. I love that movie even as a grown up. Cinderella Man, also A Need for Tissues. Both are just so, so good. Get a bunch of books from the library that are a mix of novels and photo journals. It's endless what you can do with this one single book.
Well, yeah. And I have to say, I truly think that if you were tying in with all of those different time periods and looking at the ways that that connects and how it's different and the same and all of this, this could easily be like a whole year history study. You mentioned 2 months, but if you were really doing that and looking at each of like easily an entire year history study. And that's okay, especially in
Yeah.
elementary school. Kids do not have to have the full foundation just so they can forget it and do it again in middle school. It's okay to cover something that they're really interested in because the goal of history in elementary school is to keep them interested, to get them interested and keep them interested. So when they're old enough to really remember all of the things, they actually care.
Mhm.
Okay, so we have plenty more to talk about, but I think people might be listening and being like, box videos, wild hearts can't be broken. Like, what? I've never even heard of that. How the heck are you finding all of this stuff? And like, how many hours upon hours does it take you to find all of this stuff? I know for me, when I am looking to explore a particular topic or provide my kiddo with more resources on something he's into, I'm going to start with a basic web search and then I'm going to focus on pages or articles from more trustworthy sites, maybe something like the Smithsonian and .edu websites. These days, I'm going to tread lightly with any .gov websites, but depending on the administration and all sorts of things, there can be some really great resources there too. You just have to be mindful. And then I'm probably going to search almost the exact same keywords that I used before and add something like decolonized in there too. Or I might do the same search and say non-whitewashed or own voices, just to make sure that I'm providing a nice balance and a mix of things that look at whatever we're talking about from more than just the victor's perspective. How about you? How are you going to do this?
It's a good question. I do have to say, for as much as we all talk about how evil big tech is, and they are, their freaking algorithms can be really, really, really helpful. You can bait the algorithm and let it do a bunch of work for you. So if I search something like Great Depression unit lesson plans for kids and then slowly back away from the computer, guess what's going to show up in my social media feeds or at the top of Google over the next couple of days? It's going to send me stuff. And you can do that with other terms. Swap out Great Depression for FDR, Hoover, Dust Bowl, Harlem Renaissance, and then let it serve you content. You can do the same thing with Amazon. And listen, we can boycott actually buying this stuff from Amazon all we want, but use their algorithm. It's free and it's very, very powerful. So if you enter some search criteria and then go down to like people who bought this also bought this thing, or pair this thing with these suggestions, it's basing that off of millions upon millions of searches and orders over time. So every once in a while, you will get a real oddball thrown in there. But for the most part, it's something that you can kind of pick at and go, okay, let me see what's here and let me dig into that a little bit. And once it suggests those things, you can go get them from an independent bookstore or from the library. You don't have to order them from Amazon, but you can head to the website to at least use it for that. So yeah. But I think the biggest thing is we talk all the time about raising kids who are curious. And this is the same concept where we have to be curious. So when we Google the main topic and the search results include 5 different areas and we're unsure about 2 of them, we got to dig in. And when we dig into those 5 areas, more related topics will show up and more related topics will show up. You kind of have to act like a toddler when you're doing this, where they go, but why? But why? But why? If I'm looking at the Dust Bowl and I know nothing about the Dust Bowl, I'll be like, but why did this happen now? I mean, they've been growing wheat for decades upon decades upon decades. What happened? What changed? Why? So be that annoying toddler in your own head. And it can go on forever. But if we're keeping our road trip GPS metaphor going, it is a matter of us switching the default setting that's in the GPS. So usually your GPS defaults to highways and most direct routes possible. And then there's another setting that my 18-year-old always used because he didn't like driving on highways. And he would turn on avoid highways. And it exists. And it is definitely taking the scenic route there. Because sometimes I would say to him, how far is this? And he'd be like, it's 6 hours away. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I'd be like, oh, your GPS is set to take country roads everywhere. We're not going on a massive road trip on country roads. I'll drive. So that's what your brain has to do, is your brain has to shut off the highway route and be willing to just dive into those tangential topics and let curiosity take over when it's peaked. In the beginning, it will probably take some time because I think this is a very foreign concept, especially as Americans. We have this mentality and these systems that are just programmed for maximum efficiency all the time. That's just what is ingrained in us, culturally speaking. But the more you do it, the more these side quests start to jump off the page and the connections become much more obvious. It's like anything else. It's like a muscle. Then the more you use it, the stronger it gets. And then you're like, and we could do this and we could do that. And this will be great. And we could go here. So, yeah.
I will say, though, that listening to this, I'm exhausted. My chronic fatigue and my long COVID, and it's like, yeah, or we could just take a nap. So listen, if you're listening and it's like, oh my gosh, this is not the thing that you have to do every day. You don't have to be like her oldest kiddo who just keeps your GPS set to scenic route. You can absolutely take the highways most of the time. And when your energy and your time allows, or when your kids are getting a little antsy and they need something a little bit more fun, that can be the day you take the scenic route, or that can be the week or the month that you're like, you know what, let's slow things down a little, take a little bit more time and explore. It does not have to be every day. You can make it work in your life and your schedule and your home and your spoon theory, however you need. Okay.
Mhm.
With that said, Megan is going to discuss how all of this applies to older kids in a more in-depth way momentarily. But first, just a quick reminder that we are so much more than a podcast. We're super happy you're here. We're glad you're listening. But we have also written books. We've built online courses. We publish monthly unit studies. We offer personalized coaching. We have an online community over on Patreon. We host a book club to help parents on their own growth journey. Heck, we're growing right along there with everyone else because the books are new to us as well. We're never done growing. You can check out the show notes wherever you're listening, or if you're like me and you never look at the show notes, you can head over to our website, which is just homeschoolmomsunfiltered.com for more information. It's all there. We have solid research-backed guidance for you in a huge variety of different resources. However you learn best, we probably have something there. So come, we can absolutely help you feel more confident and make those big decisions right along the way.
Yeah. Okay. Older learners, buckle up. Still on our road trip. Okay. And especially this time of year, we're seeing so many new homeschoolers in the Facebook groups who are like, I'm homeschooling a ninth grader, a fifth grader, a third grader, and a preschooler. And you have this huge stretch between kids. All that to say, you can take the same concept, the same topic, and apply it differently for your different age groups so that you're not having to come up with something brand new and different for everybody. So, as briefly as possible, for older learners, you can go way deeper. In that sort of situation where you've got this big spread of age gaps, your little ones can be in the kitchen cooking Spam while your older kiddo is designing an experiment to investigate why Spam can sit unopened on a shelf for years while fresh meat spoils in just a few days. Have them compare Spam with fresh pork or deli ham. Have them store each one under the same conditions and make daily observations. Have them note down the appearance, the odor, the texture, even the pH. You can grab some pH strips. They're not expensive. And then dig into the science behind the results by observing how salt and curing and heat sterilization and vacuum sealing and airtight cans, all of these things that slow the growth of bacteria and other microorganisms. It's a great way to connect food science and microbiology and chemistry and experimental design to something that you may or may not have in your pantry, but at a minimum, you can get it really inexpensively at the grocery store.
Not so inexpensively anymore. Who am I kidding? It is not me. But my family eats way more Spam than they just had Spam masubi for lunch. I was like, oh, she's talking about Spam. Look at that. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. And it's expensive now. Even Spam is expensive. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Craziness.
Mhm.
I'm telling you, when Astrid was in the US last month, I was making her a little list of things to bring back. And I wanted a bag of Dove chocolates because I just love them. And I was like, oh, that would be such a nice little treat. It was $12.99 for a bag. I was like, absolutely not. I'll go to the supermarket in Europe and get a Milka bar for $1.99. Absolutely not. Okay, so then let's say your kiddo does all of this experimentation. They can write a paper about it, or they can present their findings one evening in a slideshow during family movie night. Older kiddos can go way, way deeper into the New Deal programs than younger kiddos can. They can look at the budgeting and the funding and all of that stuff. I'd especially go deep into the Social Security and unemployment insurance aspects of the New Deal, since a solid 50% at least of the United States thinks that these are government handouts. They don't understand how they're funded and how they work. So give your kid the ability to go out into the world knowing why they were created, how they're funded, who is eligible for these things. Maybe they can turn the tide of stupidity that we've currently got going on, because they are not a government handout. All right. The Great Depression. Obviously, the stock market is tied in really heavily into the Great Depression. I would totally set your middle schooler and your high schooler up with accounts on either the Stock Market Game, which is a website, or Investopedia's trading simulator. The stock market game is great because it has lessons built into it on how trading works. So they're taking these online courses and then putting into practice what they've learned by trading paper money. So there's no risk. You're not putting actual money into it. Usually they get a $100,000 paper money budget, and they can buy and sell stocks and practice the things that they're learning in class.
I will say, depending on where you live, it might not be as easy to access the stock market game, but there are loads of options available online. So you can use that as the first one you kind of explore. And if for whatever reason you can't easily set up an account, there are lots of other ones to try. But yeah, super fun.
Yeah. And there's so much to be learned from stock trading, even pretend stock trading. Most successful investors will tell you that discipline is really so much more important in so many ways to successful stock trading. So talk about a transferable skill. I would like disciplined children. That would be great. Investors typically have rules like never invest based solely on social media hype, which is definitely a skill that we want our kids to have across other areas of their life, as we would like them to not get sucked into social media stuff. Never put all your money into one company. Solid rule. Don't panic because of a single bad day and make a rash decision. Base your decision on evidence, not emotion, which teaches emotional regulation. What an amazing skill to help cultivate and to talk through with your kids. Reviewing your established core rules that you've set out for yourself before you start buying and selling. You also can't successfully trade without following current events, interest rates, inflation, supply and demand. Your kiddo is going to need to gain a basic understanding of the Federal Reserve and keep an eye on their decisions and their statements. I know growing up, that was like my dad's thing was like, we're expecting an announcement from the Fed chairman on Thursday. And a lot was riding on what the Fed chairman was going to say. So paying attention to that stuff, because it's really important and it's going to affect their stock trading. They'll need to learn how to read stock charts and recognize trends. They'll need to be able to calculate returns and losses. They'll need to end up developing the ability to hold out for delayed gratification, because some stocks are a longer term strategy. They'll need to keep an eye on earnings statements and annual reports for companies that they're investing in. If you did this as a full year course, where they did this over the course of 12 months or 9 months, 10 months, whatever your school year is, they could even present their own earnings statement as their final, as their capstone project. My LLC, this is my earnings statement for the end of the year, which would be a tremendous measurement of their growth and their knowledge that they gained from this whole experience. Okay, you could also have older kids research Hoover and Roosevelt and write a paper on the similarities and differences in their leadership styles. As part of the research, listen to their most well-known speeches, listen to their inaugural addresses, look at their favorability ratings across their presidencies, look at the successful and failed policies that each one of them implemented. And by the way, I say write papers because I've been hanging out with Amanda for a really long time. And I know that I lean too relaxed for some people. And some people want that traditional academics of like, they must write the paper. And that's fine. If you want them to write a paper, have the best time ever. But you know how your kids work best. You can lean into that. If you have a kiddo who loves tech and film editing and they want to put together a 15-minute documentary with all that same information, go that route. Truly, the sky is the limit. You can do whatever you want. I just say write a paper so that the really schooly people aren't turned off by my hippiness. So anyway, remember that at the end of this, a transcript credit is typically 150 hours of class, and a half credit is typically 75 hours. If your kiddo spends an entire year on that investment project, there is no way they don't achieve at least a half a credit. And that would be like seriously half-assing this project. Even if they just muddled through it and kind of sort of learned the stuff and they were like, okay, I've had the experience, odds are good they were still going to hit 75 hours through that project. However, hopefully, in an ideal world, their curiosity will take them way, way deeper, and they'll end up in more of the full credit range of 150 hours. I mean, I lost my kiddo at the library one time. I wasn't terribly concerned. He was old enough to be lost at the library. And he turned back up with a stack of biographies that had been written about Warren Buffett. And I wasn't pushing those ideas. His brain just started spider webbing out on its own. He was taking some online classes about stock trading, and somebody must have mentioned Warren Buffett. I didn't even know that this conversation took place. Next thing I know, we're driving home from the library. He's reading a biography about Warren Buffett and eating some takeout from In-N-Out, and he was the happiest camper on earth. So the same could be said for a huge deep dive on the New Deal programs and all of that. The depth of these topics can be endless if your kiddo is interested. Let them go. I mean, you'll still be there. It's still your job to mentor and steer and guide and be available for questions and help find resources, keep tabs on what they're up to. Do those things. I'm not saying let them go in the sense of manage your own education and I'll see you in 4 years and you can help me fill in your transcript. Not that, but let their curiosity run amok. Let them have a blast.
Yeah, no, that's it. If they're enjoying it, they're going to want to learn more and they're going to remember what they learned.
And before we move on, I have to say, I think In-N-Out now, we found it that they're major MAGA assholes. Did we learn this about In-N-Out Burger? I think.
Yeah,
this was before I knew that. So this was years ago. So did not know that at the time. But yeah, anywho.
All right. So I will say you did it. You proved me right about being able to take something small and grow it quite literally exponentially. I'm still not positive that I would use a book written for an 8-year-old as my spine, but at least people will know I wasn't kidding about your ability to scale up and scale up big. So if you listened to all of that and thought, yeah, I can do something more with the call out boxes, but that's about all she wrote. That's totally fine. Like I said, whatever works for you. If you listened to that and you thought, I need way more project-based learning, and I don't even know where to begin with it, go book a coaching session with Megan or join her cohort this fall. I think she's going to end up having to run a few different sections because there's a lot of interest. But this is really her happy place. So you can go spend time with her and she will do all of this for you and with you, and it'll be amazing. I will also say I'm going to try to convince her to turn this whole episode into a resource that we can sell on our website and Teachers Pay Teachers. So if you were contemplating going back and trying to take notes on all of that, just keep an eye out for the actual resource because it'll come with links, and everybody knows clickable links make life way easier.
Like, wild hearts can't be broken. Okay, got it. Yeah.
You just have like 4 pages and half of it's just like, it was going too fast. I'm not entirely sure. And hey, next week we're going to be talking phonics instruction. So it'll be Megan's turn to sit back and hang out and listen while I go ham about something that I'm super passionate about. That said, for now, we will end with our mantra. So today's mantra is, you don't have to choose between structure and curiosity. The strongest education often grows from both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. Well, thanks for hanging with us today. And yeah, come. I will talk to you about project-based learning all day long. It would be the time of my life. We're going to have a blast. So come hang out.
Please come pay me to talk about project-based learning. It's like the example of, like pick a job you love and it'll never be a day of work. Like,
yeah, I'll build you any unit you want. It'll be a blast. Yeah. Oh my goodness. And in the meantime, friends, you're doing amazing. Happy homeschooling.
Yeah. Have a great one.